So I am really excited today to talk to you about Project Leaders. Project Leaders is a program that's going to fund 5 PhD students at Ohio State University, specifically in the areas of severe disabilities and advanced research methods, which is a really unusual combination of skills that's going to prepare people for really well when they hit the job market after they get their PhD at Ohio State. What I'm going to do first is give you an advanced organizer. So my name is Matt Brock. I always start with an advanced organizer because I started as a special education teacher myself. So as a trained teacher, this is how I've always talked with advanced organizers. I've been at Ohio State University for 7 years, proud to work at this program. We do some really great work. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how Project Leaders fits in and the benefits of getting a PhD through Project Leaders. So here's an advanced organizer. First, I'll give you an overview of what Project Leaders is. Then I'll talk through mentors, faculty, and staff that you would be in contact with Project Leaders. Then I'll talk through specific coursework that you would have in your PhD program. Next, special training experiences that are, some of which are really cool, some of which I wish I had in my PhD program. I'm excited about some of those. And then I'll talk a little bit about our track record of success. So talking about students that I've advised in severe disabilities up to this point, some of the jobs that they have, the kind of jobs you could expect to have coming through a program. I'll talk a little bit about living in Columbus. Some of you are local, so you may know Columbus better than I do, but I think Columbus is a pretty cool place to live, and I'll share with you why I think that's the case. And then I'll talk a little bit about how we value diversity at OSU, both in terms of the diversity we represent on campus and the commitment that we make to diversity. And finally, I'll talk about next steps. So if you haven't already applied, how you go about doing that, what do you do if you have questions through the application process? And then at the very end, I will hit stop record and you can ask me any questions that you want. If you're watching a recording of this today and you're thinking, I had questions, I wish I could have made it to the live session, you're welcome to shoot me an email. I'll set up a time with you to talk and you'll see my contact info at the end of this presentation. So I will go ahead and get rolling. Overview. What is Leaders? Leaders focuses on special education for students with severe disabilities. Most PhD programs that focused on this population of students, this is students with intellectual disability, autism, or multiple disabilities that have significant support needs. So as you all know, intellectual disability is a huge spectrum. Autism is a huge spectrum. I am focused on those disability groups, but students on the more significant support needs side within those disability groups. Most programs that focus on those disability groups focus almost exclusively on single case design or applied behavior analysis as the one research method to study students with disabilities and to study interventions. We at Ohio State do an awesome job with single case design. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the textbook that was written in here that's used widely in applied behavior analysis, but Herring, Cooper, and Hubert have a pretty famous textbook, so it's a strong history there. This program will include an emphasis on applied behavior analysis and single case design, just as much as any other PhD program would. The advantage of coming to OSU is on top of that, I'm committed to giving you expertise in a range of research methodologies. And the benefits to being able to use a range of research methodologies is if you want to work in the field at a university, being a researcher, a teacher trainer, having more research skills makes you more marketable when you get jobs. It makes you a more productive scholar when you're able to use different skills. So want to be clear that we're not doing away with single case or applied behavior analysis. That's a major component. The benefit is the addition of those other methodologies. Project Leaders is a fully funded 4-year program. So it starts summer 2022 and goes until summer 2026. When you go in the application process for OSU, you're going to have to apply for fall 2022, and then we'll backdate you to summer 2022. It's just a limitation how our application system is working right now. It covers tuition, books, and fees for that whole time. So you don't pay for any of those things. It also pays a monthly living stipend. I will tell you this in the recording. I didn't put this in print because the number I'm going to tell you is higher than what we usually are able to offer PhD students. So I didn't want them to see this number on the website. But we're going to offer about $30,000 a year to folks on top of tuition, books, and fees. So we're essentially paying you to be a student. It's a really good deal. The reason why I say about 30,000 is I believe the stipend starts at like 29 the first year, and then it goes up with cost of living. So it goes up quite a bit above 30 by the end and starts just below 30 at the beginning. We also buy you a computer, which we will hand you, and there's also money for you to attend conference travel and training opportunities. So this grant is a lot of money, and almost all of the money is going directly to benefits for the 5 people, PhD students who are coming in. And on top of all those things, you get mentorship from leading experts in severe disabilities and advanced research methods. I'll kind of walk you through the different mentors that'll be involved in this project and their roles when we get to that section. I've gotten some people who have asked me, like, can I be a part-time student with Leaders? And the answer is no. Leaders is a full-time program. And the reason why it is because when you get to PhD training, if you're serious about being a researcher and a scholar and someone who trains teachers, full-time is the way to go, and I'll explain why. Number one is Leaders pays you to be a student. So some people do part-time because they think, oh, I'm going to come behind financially if I take the time out to actually, do this. But if you think that's the case, do the math. If you're getting paid to be a student 30 grand a year, it's hard to think that you can spread this. You're going to have to spread that program over probably twice as long if you're going to go part-time and pay your own way for all of those benefits I just put up. So there's not really a financial issue once you have the Leaders funding. That's what it's there for. Second is that excellent research training includes mentorship on federally funded research projects in schools. And most people who try to work and go part-time are trying to teach during the day. If you're teaching during the day, you can't go see other research projects in action at other schools because you're teaching during that time. Teaching super valuable experience, just can't do that and be part of these large research projects and see what's actually happening in schools simultaneously. Third, part of being trained to be a leader in special ed is training in college teaching and supervision. So teaching undergraduate classes to get your feet wet with that, and also supervising student teachers. Again, things that you need flexibility during the day. And also can't graduate in 4 years going part-time. So you can see the finish line a lot more clearly when you're going as a full-time student. Some of you, I may already been preaching to the choir with these things, but if you weren't convinced, hopefully I'm convincing you now. And last thing, cool thing about project leaders in particular being full-time is that the five of you that are admitted to this program are going to know each other really well. I actually, as a PhD, was funded through a similar process to this at a different university, and I am still tight with the people that were admitted at the same time as me. To talk to you a little bit about the funding source. The funding source for this is the Office of Special Education Programming, which is within the U.S. Department of Education. This is a federal grant that pays for Leaders. Something that you should know is that this is a competitive funding process for us to even get funded in the first place. So U.S. Department of Education had to say, yes, Matt Brock, Leaders is an awesome program. Ohio State is an excellent PhD program, or we wouldn't have this funding to begin with. Second is that OSEP doesn't give this money away with no strings attached. So the strings that are attached is that OSEP requires you to work in the field of special education after you graduate from our program, which I think is a pretty reasonable expectation, because basically they're saying we want some return on our investment. We don't want you to go we don't want to pay for your PhD in special education and then you decide you want to go do quantum mechanics, then we've wasted our investment and you get into PhD, because they're interested in addressing a faculty shortage in special education. That said, I want to train you to be university faculty. You can meet this 8-year requirement by working in the field in a variety of ways. Wouldn't necessarily have to be as a university faculty member if you chose a different pathway. It would just have to be in the field for 8 years post-graduation. The other piece is OSEP requires that Leader scholars are U.S. citizens or permanent residents. That is not my rule, that is theirs. But if you're not a citizen or a green card holder, then you're not going to be able to be eligible for Leaders funding. I'm sorry if any of you fits in that situation. Again, that is the government's rule, not mine. That said, I still would encourage you to apply to Ohio State University's special education program, and we can consider you for alternative funding streams, just not this particular one. If you're interested in seeing what the OSEP have the rules of the funding, there's actually an agreement that you would sign as a scholar if you were offered this funding and you wanted to move forward with it. And it explains that for every year in the program, you need to document that you've worked in the field for 2 years. So 4 years in the program times 2 equals the 8 years, where I get that from. But there's that link at the bottom if you are interested. All right. Another cool thing about Leaders is that not only are you going to work with a special ed program, but you're also going to get to work closely with the Crane Center for Early Childhood Research and Policy, which is actually where I'm sitting right now in the office that I'm in right now. It's a beautiful building. This is a picture of it. Awesome thing about this building is downstairs there is a preschool and early childhood center. So it's often possible to be able to do some research actually downstairs. And if you were part of Project Leaders, you would have office space up here on the second floor of this building. Also perks of this building is that college campus parking is often tough, not tough at this building, super easy parking. Next, leaders, mentors, faculty, and staff. So who is the leadership on leaders? First person is me, who you already know. I have researched a number of areas. I'm going to kind of hit the high points so you have an idea of what kind of mentorship I would provide. One project that I'm principal investigator on is called Flip Recess. This is a large randomized control trial. It's a big efficacy trial, which is about seeing if something works. And it's about seeing if the intervention works specifically for students with severe disabilities at recess who could use some support with their social skills and communication. It's focused on giving peers really simple strategies for engaging students with significant disabilities, as well as a video modeling component to focus on social skills for those students. We've done a ton of pilot work up to this point, but this is kind of icing on the cake in that we're doing this huge 5-year randomized control trial with a lot of students to see, does this work on a large scale in a lot of schools. Other work that I do has been focused on peer support arrangements, so promoting inclusion through peer-mediated intervention in general education classrooms. And then I've also done a lot of work focused on paraeducator training, given that paraeducators have a huge hand in the education of students with significant disabilities. And in my view, don't get as much respect, training, and mentoring as they deserve. And that's what my work has been focused on, is how can we do a better job of supporting them and making sure that they're prepared to be effective members of special education teams. Next person on the project is Dr. Ann O'Connell. She is an expert in quantitative research methods. So her area is not focused on disabilities, but she does work with me, but she applies her lens of quantitative evaluation. That's why she's on this project, is to bring that expertise. Ann is also a co-principal investigator on Flip Recess. So she's the principal methodologist on that grant. She also has her own work specifically in quantitative research methods. This is actually a graph of one of my PhD students of a study that he did that she supported him with. That'd be cool to show that funky looking graph. It would take too much time for me to explain to you what it means. It's kind of overwhelming. And she has her own grant called Evidence-Based Intervention Training for Education. It's an awesome process for linking up with local schools and helping them sort through research evidence and choose interventions that they think will be effective and a good fit for their students. So that's awesome work too. Both Flip Recess and eBite are projects that you would have a hand in if you're a PhD student there, and you would get some mentored experiences that would improve your ability to do research and scholarship in the future. Third person on this is Dr. Laura Justice. She is actually executive director of the Crane Center. She's a speech language pathologist by training. A lot of her work focuses on literacy and early literacy. She also has expertise in students with complex communication challenges, which is why she has a role on this grant, since that's a heavy overlap with students with significant disabilities. And she and I actually have a grant together right now that she's the lead on, that focuses on peer-mediated intervention for preschoolers who are at risk for disabilities. So similar work to what I just described, is for a younger population and for students who are at risk. She has a number of huge projects that she's done that have data sets that include students with significant disabilities, and she's going to provide mentorship to students on doing some of that analysis with those data sets. Other people that are probably more important than any of the faculty I just mentioned, on the left is Jessica Lowe. She's program coordinator for special education. If you do apply to our program, she's the person who would reach out for arrangements, for interviews and visits and all those things. The person on the right is Janelle Williamson. She's strategic coordinator here at the Crane Center. So she's kind of the face of coordinating with people who have funding through the Crane Center, like this grant would. Other faculty in special education that do other work. I'm the only faculty currently in significant disabilities, but I'm going to go through faculty that do other work so you just have a sense of the range of expertise that's here that you would have access to. Sheila Morgan focuses on students. Some work with autism, more high functioning and learning disabilities, high incidence disabilities. Christina Billman does work on high incidence disabilities. Peter Paul does work for students who are deaf or hard of hearing. Donna Ford does work in gifted education. Moira Conrad does work for students with high incidence disabilities, emotional behavior disorders. Yvonne Goddard does some work in early childhood education. Terry Hessler focuses on dyslexia, and Alana focuses on students with reading challenges. All right, next up, I wanted to share that we also have a connection with the Nysonger Center. If you're not familiar with the Nysonger Center, it's a university center of excellence in developmental disabilities. It offers interdisciplinary training, both to students and the community focused on students, individuals with developmental disabilities. If you're part of Project Leaders, you would take coursework through Nysonger, which is awesome because it's interdisciplinary coursework that you would take courses along physical therapists, occupational therapists, other related service people that are all really interested in students with significant disabilities, but come from different lenses. So exciting classes to take. People that offer those classes include Luke Lecavalier is an expert in autism and assessment, Katie Walton, expert in early intervention, autism, and Mark Tasse, director of Nysonger Center, expert in intellectual disability and assessment. As far as coursework that you would take with Project Leaders, there's a whole list here. I'm going to go kind of fast. There's some courses that are going to be a focus on special education and significant disability. It's going to include that interdisciplinary coursework through Nysonger. Also going to include special education research methods. So thinking about how do we apply research methods specifically to special education to answer different research questions. There's a class that focuses just on current trends in special ed research. We bring in guest speakers every week. That's a fun course. Special education law course, a whole kind of well-rounded package that you get there focused specifically on special ed significant disabilities. Next, there's the heavy focus on quantitative methods. Some of these courses everybody takes, and you'll see at the end that you have a little flexibility with some choice. So there's an intro to research methods. There's an introduction to educational statistics. There's courses in general linear modeling. If you don't know what that is okay. I should emphasize, if you know nothing about statistics, that is okay. This program is designed to accommodate someone who is coming in at the lowest level. If you already know something, you might be able to skip over some of the intro courses, but this will work for everybody. So don't be stressed and think, ooh, this is too much for me. You'll be okay. There's courses you'll take in multi-level modeling and hierarchical linear modeling, structural equation modeling, and there's a capstone seminar that's tacked on at the end. In addition to all those, you'll take 2 additional courses of your choice, and as a process, you will actually earn a certificate in advanced research methods when you're done, making you highly marketable when you hit the job market. In addition to those formal coursework, there's going to be a series of special topic workshops that are going to focus specifically on quantitative methods, severe disabilities that you're going to get that I'm excited about. Also, some of those will be offered by Ann O'Connell, and some of those will be offered by experts outside of OSU that I'll share in just a minute. That interdisciplinary specialization in quantitative research methods really kind of puts you at the forefront of research methods. Today, you'll be taking courses not just with special ed folks, but because it's interdisciplinary, you'll be taking folks that are getting degrees in all kinds of areas and get to know people who are using all kinds of cool methods. So I'm excited about that experience for you. There's the requirements here that I have at the bottom, but the list that I just gave you fulfills those requirements that you'll have to do. So I won't say any more about that now. Other methods courses, you will take the sequence on single case design or applied behavior analysis. You'll also take an introductory course in qualitative methods. If you decide qualitative methods is an area where I want to learn more, you're welcome to take additional courses if that's your choice. But we require everyone to at least take an introductory course so they have some level of competency and understanding what a qualitative study looks like, and they're able to read and understand qualitative research designs. Also take some experiences and analysis of large scale data. which will include access to public use or restricted access data. I'm really proud to hear that we have a lab that's set up with restricted data from the US Department of Education. That means it's huge data sets the government have collected. It's not publicly available. You have to apply for it and have a room that's a computer that's not hooked up to the internet, that you lock the door and you go in and do your work. And we have one of those. I'm excited about it and able to be able to do some really cool research you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. Other course foci, we make sure that you're well prepared to be a good college level teaching instructor. There's a course in educational policy and leadership, professional writing. Special training experiences, get the mentorship on the research projects that I already talked through that Ann and I lead. And also, you guys are going to be certified to use the Autism Program Environmental Rating Scale. I'm really excited about this. I was one of the people that helped originally develop this, although Sam Odom, who leads this, has taken this work a lot farther after I've stepped off of that team. But it's focused on measuring the quality of how is the level of quality of programs in schools for students with autism. I'm focused on the level of quality for inclusive programs. So excited about you guys being certified in that. And finally, the Council for Exceptional Children has a legislative summit. If we have if COVID numbers keep going down, the way that works is you actually get to go to DC, talk directly to legislatures, and learn some advocacy skills to talk about, this is why special education needs funding, and here's what I think priorities are for students with severe disabilities. You can take some leadership there. It's pretty cool. Also, lectures and consultation with experts. I'm super excited about the lineup I'm about to share right now. So these are all people who will either be coming in person, hopefully will be in person, or if COVID's travel is an issue, we'll be doing virtual visits, and that are experts in either severe disabilities, advanced research methods, or both. Dr. Chris Lemons at Stanford University, he does some awesome large-scale research focused on reading interventions for students with Down syndrome. This is Craig Enders. He's at UCLA. He specializes in approaches for missing data and large-scale secondary data analysis. This is Dr. Brian Boyd. He's director of Juniper Gardens at the University of Kansas, and he has done a number of efficacy studies that have been focused on mostly young kids with autism, some that are kind of across the age span, students with autism. He also has some really cool work he's doing right now that's focused on culturally responsive instruction and cultural bias among instruction for really young kids with autism. And then on the far right is James Pustovarsky, and he does leading work in some advanced quantitative analysis for single case design. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the idea of meta-analysis and single case design. You will as project leaders. It's something we're kind of on the cutting edge of right now, and James is the guy to talk to. So I'm excited that he's going to be part of that team also. So people that you get access to. I already talked about restricted data sets. You also get training and internship focused on supervision and pre-service teachers. So actually have experienced mentors that help you mentor student teachers if you haven't done that yet. Pay your way to the Council for Exceptional Children Conference, and pay your way to the TASH Conference. That includes opportunities to interact with the Early Career Network that TASH has. TASH is an organization, if you don't know, it's focused specifically on significant disabilities. So it's all researchers focused in the same area that we are. So really cool to link up with other doc students and early career researchers in that area. Finally, there'll be a seminar at the end to make sure that you are in good position to get hired at the end of leaders. Next, I want to talk a little bit about track record of success. These are all people who I have graduated just in the last couple of years. On the left, Mary Barsak's at the University of Oklahoma, John Schaefer's at Cleveland State University. On the right, Rachel Seaman-Tallis is at the University of West Georgia. These are all smart people who admitted to OSU and have jobs leaders in special education right now. So if you want to know what would it look like if I go through this program, Google these three people. See what kind of jobs they're in right now and how successful they are. I think that you will be encouraged when you do. Next, if you already live in Columbus, you know it's a cool place to live. If you don't, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. You might not know that Columbus actually gets ranked really high, specifically on being a budget-friendly metro and having more cultural experiences than you would realize, and for having lots of smart, educated people in a small area. So if you don't know a lot about Columbus, don't write us off as being in a cornfield. Part of Ohio is cornfields. Columbus is not. It's a large metro area with a lot of things to see and do. Some of those things to see and do include parks. I was blown away here when I saw how many parks there were here. There's a large metro park system. There's a park by my house called High Banks Metro Park. It's like the size of a state park. It's amazing. The downtown Stay Out a Mile is cool. There's another picture of High Banks. Also, the Greenway system is here. Awesome. Is awesome also. I live far away from campus that if I biked, it takes me almost an hour. Maybe because I'm slow, I should get to be a faster biker. But I can bike almost on entirely bike path from my house all the way to campus. And you can see here on the map the amount of bike paths and plain bike paths are amazing. A lot of students live in areas where they can walk or bike to campus. Next up, museums and attractions. If you haven't been here before, we have a lot of cool stuff. There's a nice picture of the Museum of Art. There's the Center for Science and Industry. There's Franklin Park Conservatory. That picture actually doesn't do it justice. That's just a small outdoor area, the awesome area inside also. And there's the Columbus Zoo, which is Jack Hanna Zoo. It's something that we're proud of also. So lots of cool stuff to do. Also sports. We have lots of pro sports teams here. Columbus Clippers minor league baseball, Columbus Crew is Major League Soccer. Then there's the hockey team. We have the Blue Jackets, and you might not know this, but Ohio State happens to have a football team. There's a picture of the football team there. And the rowing team killed it this year, so I put them on there as an example of the other college sports that we have here also, if that's what you're into. I put a link up here to the nightlife because I am old and have young kids, which means I don't go out for the night, I go to bed. But you guys probably like to experience the nightlife. So you can click that link if you're interested. There you can find all kinds of things going on with Columbus for live music. There's a whole brewery district. I have been there. There's entertainment, live plays, ballet. There's a symphony orchestra, and the restaurants here are excellent. Columbus is actually a test market for some new restaurants that people want to try out, because they have a good cross section of folks here to try restaurants out on. So some cutting edge stuff happening here. All right, I want to also emphasize our commitment to diversity at OSU, as well as a few statistics to tell you how diverse the student body is. I think some people think, oh, it's Ohio. I'm thinking only farmers. I get a certain picture in my mind. But we actually have excellent diversity amongst graduate students here. Women actually outnumber men about 60 to 40 there that you see on the left. And on the right, you see that about half of students are white and about half of students come from other races and ethnicities, which I'm excited about. Our student body is better, our education is better when we have diversity represented in a number of ways. So I'm excited about that. We also have a commitment to diversity that we demonstrate through initiatives through the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Global Engagement. And I just personally am specifically interested in building a cohort that is not homogenous, that represents diversity. So I just want to make that clear, that if you yourself represent diversity, know that that will be a plus when you turn in your application. As far as next steps, if you like what you've heard and you want to apply to project leaders, what you need to do is you need to apply by December 1st. You have almost a month left. There's the hyperlink right there if you want to do that. When you do apply, you're going to complete application is going to need a resume or a CV, a statement of purpose that's going to articulate, this is why I want to get a PhD in special education at Ohio State, your college transcripts, and you're going to need several letters of recommendation. It's best if you can get those letters of recommendation from people who are college faculty members. If you can't, it's also okay to get other folks in there, but it's better to get professional references. You don't want personal references there. Last bullet point that you see up there is that you want to make sure in the statement of purpose, you say, I want to work with Dr. Brock on project leaders. That's what gets you considered for funding on project leaders. So make that clear in your statement of purpose. Also should be clear in your statement of purpose that you're interested in studying students with significant disabilities. That's what leaders is focused on. So if you say, I'm focused on learning disabilities or emotional behavior disorders only, then I'm gonna think that it's probably not a good fit for leaders, because that's not what this program is focused on. So make sure you, if you want leaders, then express that interest specifically in severe disabilities. Also, last thing is we're going to have a recruitment weekend on January 20th to 22nd. So after we review applications on December 1st, we're going to select a number of folks to actually come to campus for interviews. We're going to show you around, wine and dine you is the goal, and show you a good time, and also have you learn a little bit more about leaders, us learn a little bit about you, and then we'll pick the 5 people who will get leaders funding from that pool. But if you would, just hold those dates on your calendar, so if you get invited, you're available to do that. Also, next steps, if you you can ask questions, anything you want in just a second, but if you have questions after today, or you have to go, or you're listening to the recording, reach out to me at the email address that you see up there. I'm happy just to answer questions via email. I'm happy to set up a time to talk via Zoom or on the phone at a time that works for both of us. So feel free to reach out to me. If you have questions about how to navigate the application process itself, and you get in there, I'm not sure which button to click, I'm not the best person to help you with that. The best person to help you with that is in our student services office. Her name is Megan Tuttle. Her email address is up there. She also is happy to talk to you, email, phone, Zoom, in order to help you make sure you get your application finished successfully. So with that, I am going to stop and take your questions. And I'm also going to hit the stop recording button.